Hello, everybody. Welcome to Drawn to Us, a podcast with a profile picture drawn by us. And by us, I mean Heck, where we draw ideas from us to draw you in. Welcome, and I hope you're tuning in at a fun time. So, how are you two guys doing? How have you been over the past week?
Oh, I was just admiring that smooth intro. Nice job.
Yeah, see, I was kind of disappointed that it went so smoothly.
Don't worry, we'll get some bumps next time.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, yeah. You want to tell us how your week was first, Impy? I always go first.
Sure.
Actually, NP always goes first.
I do.
Start off.
Do I? Do I?
You
I
do.
don't. Sure. Okay. Yeah, I don't want to go first. I always go first. So go ahead, Heck.
Oh, boy. Well, I mean, it was just one of those busy weeks, you know? It's like when the weather changes from kind of wintry to more spring-like, it gets more and more difficult for me to keep track of things, you know? It's like I'm always tired. I'm always either sneezing or rubbing my eyes or dying because of pollen. And in between all of that, I have to do all of summer's torturous lessons. And then
No idea what you're talking about.
and I'll also try and work on all my personal projects, right? It's nice, you know? I just never say no. And then I get like this huge pile of stuff to do. So, yeah.
Which you would have had a better time dealing with if you listened to our lessons, right? Sometimes you have to say no to good in order to say yes to other things.
I mean, right now, what's bothering me is that freaking script for this game that my friend wants to work on. And it's just almost impossible for me to do. You know, every time I sit down to work on it, I get this splitting headache. Just, you know, the same headache I get when we do this podcast. So, yeah, you know, it's fun.
It is. Okay, so your week was crazy busy with developing your game script and also, I presume, getting to buy a bunch of stuff because I remember you got a programmer on board.
I was actually talking about something else, but yeah,
Oh,
2 games.
The script for the other game, yeah, never mind. Because I ain't busy enough.
Yeah, exactly.
Man, that's stereotypical Asian.
Talking about stereotypical and busy. Tyler, how's your job been?
Talking about stereotypical and busy.
You know,
he is a basic guy.
No, I get it's a joke, but then again, stereotypically American. Oh, okay. So yeah, it's been quite busy. It's been extremely interesting. It's been the most interesting week in a while. So this weekend or last weekend was Easter, you know that. So we celebrated the resurrection of Jesus.
Jesus, yes.
Cheese. Yeah. So
please, Jesus.
That was good.
Of cheese.
Me either. So it happened, and it was all good and stuff, and we were gonna work, but it rained on Monday, so we didn't work on Monday. Then, to make up for it, we were like busting our butts for 4 days, just doing like 11-hour days on the job. It was ridiculously busy.
That is crazy. How did you guys eat?
Well, we take lunch.
Like a 3-hour lunch in between. We aren't barbarians.
Oh, that's funny. We have a half an hour lunchtime as per mandated by the government. So it was just a lot of work. It was super busy. And then I believe it was Thursday. Thursday was when the Maryland governor, he actually, and then it got to Calvert County, the place I'm in. We finally had the order that everybody must wear masks if you're going out to any shopping and stuff. So if you go into a store, they're limiting the amount of people in the store to 10 people at a time. So you have to wait in line. And, you know, if you go into, you know, gas stations or whatever, masks, you got to wear masks. So I'm like, okay, it's gotten pretty bad at this point. Well, one of our employees, he's the only one that has to drive a good ways, so he would have to get gas and stuff. And I was like, hey, dude, you should probably just stay home for a couple of weeks because as the whole entire situation around us is pretty crazy. And the number of cases in Maryland is actually going down. So, I went to facilitate that.
Good on you.
So I told him to stay. I told him, like, yo, you should probably stay home, because he works part-time, and the other part-time, he actually works at a hotel, which is a hotbed for corona, I would imagine.
Oh, aren't the hotels closed yet? Because everything here is just closed.
And hotels are still essential, according to the
essential
Maryland
to
government.
Who? I mean, you won't have travelers, you won't have tourists.
You still do have some of them. There's also people stuck in the country, right? So what do you do if you're stuck in a country and don't have a place to go? You kind of have to go to a hostel or a hotel.
I can see that, but then they could just be open for those cases, and not commercially open. Well,
and there's still people. So whatever. He's working at a hotel. On Thursday was when the hotel actually started telling people to wear masks, like the workers. So before Thursday, which might I remind you, is well into the whole coronavirus thing, where 30,000 people have died in America. So it's not until it's already super bad that they're like, oh, by the way, we should probably tell you to wear masks. But anyway, so he's not wearing masks. So I'm like, you should stay home. But my dad is still the owner of the company. So when I was telling the guy to stay home, my dad was like, no, you should come in. You're a very important member of the team. And, we want you to come in and work. And I'm like, okay, but no, because are you dumb? And then
that's a natural reaction. Yeah.
the guy is like being passive aggressive, like, fine, if you want me to stay home, I'll stay home for 2 weeks. Jeez. Like, dude, do you not read the news? America is more cases than anybody else because of people like you people.
Mm-hmm.
And then my dad's like, oh, he should be coming in. And then later, my dad's like, oh, you should not have told him to go home. You got to respect his feelings. I'm like, what the feelings? What kind of this crap? And then my parents want to have a talk with me where we can be rational and discuss it with each other. I'm like, do they not know what's going on? 54,000 people, as of last I heard, have died because of this thing, because stupid Americans are stupid. Like, I don't know if you heard, in Minnesota, they're protesting a stay-at-home order because they're stupid. And then even in my own...
Don't worry, they won't be doing that for long, one way or another. Also, I can confirm, Impy, it's always your, emotions. God damn it, those are stupid!
It's just ridiculous. And then, even in Annapolis, the capital of Maryland, there's a whole Facebook group, and they're apparently trying to protest today the stay-at-home order. Like, apparently there was 13,000 members in the Facebook group that were trying to show up at this protest. I'm like, what are people...
Yeah, the best part is, I don't know. I don't understand the whole concept. How can you protest a virus? How can you protest something?
No, I mean, they're protesting the stay-at-home order because the governor ordered us all to stay home unless you're essential. So they're like, no, reopen the states. I don't want to stay at home.
Well, they're doing that because of the virus, right?
Yeah.
So it is just silly. You're protesting the middleman. You're protesting the person who's trying to help you.
It's just idiocy. I don't have any other word for it. Summer, what's another word for this?
Idiocracy. Oh, goodness, another word for this type of behavior or this type of people or this...
Stubborn, ignorant,
dumb. Stubborn, ignorant. I would say it's an ochlocracy, or they're attempting to establish an ochlocracy.
Ochlocracy.
Yes. It might be ochlocracy. I don't know
A clock?
Based on the stupid multitude suppressing the minor parts, which is, by the way, not how democracy works. But People are really stupid. There's a movie about this. It's called Idiocracy, which kind of fits the bill. So I have a question. First of all, thank you for respecting the stay-at-home order. Also, stay safe, everyone. Other thing is, I was wondering, so on Monday you didn't get any work done because of the raid, right?
I didn't work.
Yeah, so does that mean that you guys can't do any work digitally?
Correct. Well, I did a couple hours of blah 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 office work, something or other. I don't remember. But yeah, as landscaping, it's all on-site work.
Well, on the one hand, that's of course pretty bad because you always have to rely on the weather being acceptable and stuff. On the other hand, I quite like it because it means you don't have to be scared of digitalization taking away your job. Segue into today's topic. I would like for us to start off with you guys introducing, because you've both done some awesome amount of research, I suppose. So I'd like for you to introduce just a topic list so we can all get a general overview of what's going to be talked about tonight. Does that sound good?
You're putting a lot of faith in me to be able to come up with a bunch of topics.
Just tell me what you did research about and what you'd personally like to talk about. A few keywords is all I need.
Okay, sure. Well, I mean, today, we're talking about digital art versus traditional art. So I took the digital side and I did a little bit of reading into the history. Not that much, not much at all, actually. And none of the stuff I found is actually that interesting. So I'd prefer to talk about recent, how digital art has been recently. And when I say recently, I mean like the past 10, 20 years, because there's been a lot of changes to digital art in that time. And how people still react to digital art nowadays, that's always fun.
That sounds good. And then we'll get your personal journey as well.
Sure.
Is it my
turn?
How about
now? You? Yeah.
Specifically, where I was, our dearest moderator, Summertime, asked me to look into music. It's basically music production, because I don't know how to phrase it. I mean, the history of music is very much traditional, and only recently in the 1950s and further have we seen digital forms of music being made. And a big part of music itself nowadays is the digital aspect of it and how it's mixed and mastered. So, and like the transition as a current musician from a more traditional form of instrument such as a guitar or a piano to a digital audio workstation, a DAW. It's quite interesting, and I suppose those are my topics. What'd you get out of that?
I got more than plenty, thank you too. I'll try to moderate it in between. I put in some tidbits, but more so that you guys talk, because there's a bit of noise in my background tonight. The other thing is, of course, I will have to say the things I'm very passionate about. And the first thing is, thank you for doing your research, and I'll try to kind of change the topics between one person talking for about 20 minutes. If it ends sooner, we'll move on, and each of you gets one topic per time, right? So what I'd like to start off with is actually Imperfect. And I'm personally quite curious because from my music lessons in high school, I remember that way before digital music got created, there was already electronic ways of creating music. There was even an instrument where you'd move your hand across a certain electric field, if I remember, and those disturbances were interpreted as noise, right?
Okay, that's the theremin. I don't actually know when it was invented, but I've seen it work, and it's pretty cool. I'd like to play one day.
Oh, you would? Is it still used nowadays?
The last time I ever saw theremin was on like a German talent show, like over 6 years ago.
Oh,
yeah, they got up on stage and they were like, "Oh, well, what instrument are you gonna play? Like, that's not even a real instrument, And then this girl was just fiddling around in the air and it made sound, and then everybody was like, "What? What?"
Well, have you tried playing the air as an instrument? It sounds quite
No, I
hard.
have not. But I mean, it did look very cool. Yeah, from what I remember.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a few videos of it, and I've seen people utilize the instrument in songs and stuff. If I remember correctly, one artist that used it was Imogen Heap. She's into experimental stuff anyway. But then you have all the people on YouTube who are like, "Oh, crazy new instrument. What does this do?" And I mean, that happens a bit. But I don't know. I don't actually know when that was made, but sure. It's probably been around for a while.
I would presume that's the first. Would you consider this a digital instrument, or at what point does an instrument more digital than traditional? Because you did say traditional instruments dominate, right? So I'm wondering, have digital instruments co-evolved to traditional ones, or are they much rather something completely different? Also, no, let's talk about this first, and then we'll move on.
I mean, I wouldn't exactly call it digital, but that does seem to be the dividing line. But they're pretty much the instruments that don't require electricity, and they're primarily powered by the human voice or human interaction, making strings vibrate or whatever. And then you do have like a theremin, which is, it requires an external power source, or internal. Yeah, internal. It requires a power source other than vibrating air or human body. The theremin, synthesizer, electric guitar, stuff like those. You know, you can't exactly go out into a field and just play them for people. So
Not really, no. Yeah.
I mean,
go on.
I would guess I would call, yeah, I would call that a dividing line between digital and traditional. Though, I mean, you know, no hard lines here, generally.
So there is a blurry line between those two, you say?
It's somewhat blurry and somewhat hard.
You could almost see it, you know, between being tangible or not being tangible, right? Because, I mean, can you not? I mean, with the theremin, right? You're just playing the air, and then if you're playing, you know, something using a computer software, you're using a computer software, right? Whereas with a violin or a guitar or something like that, it's something you hold and, you know, control with your actual, you know, by actually interacting with the instrument itself.
Yeah, I mean, and then just a slight dividing line there is the electric guitar. That just, it's still a guitar, and there are hollow body electric guitars that you can play without an amp, but most electric guitars, they're not hollow enough so the sound doesn't resonate out like an acoustic guitar. So, I mean, like, you can still make noise with an electric guitar, but you just need the amp to actually bring out all the capabilities in it.
The other thing, of course, being, for example, the theremin was mentioned as playing with air, quote unquote. And there's another type of very traditional and absolutely non-electronic music, which is singing or whistling, that also just plays the air, which isn't really tangible, is it? Also, that's the next segue, by the way. Tyler, how would you say singing, whistling, voice is also part of musical instruments, or is it something different?
I mean, yeah, musical instrument. It is the first musical instrument that we all learn. I would call it a musical instrument, yes, because music itself is just wiggling of air. So anything that can wiggle air, like I can tap my desk and make music. So, yeah, the human voice is just wiggling. Yeah, I would call it music.
Okay, sounds good.
The philosophy of the air wiggle.
Philosophy? Did someone just trigger me? Now, next topic, Heck, I would like for you to talk about, I know you're a bit more bored in those aspects, but the advent and invention of digital art, so how it first came to be, is something I'm personally quite interested in, for example. So please do share your insights upon those things.
That was, actually part of the article that very nicely got just cut off. You know,
So
like
what are the things you did figure out?
I mean, pretty much what they were saying is that digital art has been around a lot longer than we think. And well, I mean, I don't know. I'm curious, right? How long do you think we've had digital art?
Well, in order for that to work, I'd have first to define digital art because personally, for example, if it's something like drawing, I think it's actually been around for less time than, for example, video game design, right? Or occasionally maybe programming.
Where do you draw the line between that, right?
That's my question for you. Where do you draw the line between art and something that's not entirely art but contains it?
Well, I mean, I think there's no real difference between it, right? Digital art for games or for, you know, what display purposes, I suppose, are still both art, you know? I mean, if you take a high resolution screenshot of a game, you know, how is that different from anything you would make to display? And the same with video game backgrounds, right? It's like they're made to be static at a certain point and they're made to look good. And, you know, it's just the exact same as if I were to paint a scenery picture, you know? They're interchangeable. You can slot them in either situation, you know? As long as the art style fits, obviously.
There is a hard line, though, because specifically with video games or videos, those things are not necessarily static, right? And would you personally say that video games are also art?
Of course. Yeah. I don't think anybody would or should say that video games are not art, you know?
Okay,
because I've been
no, go on.
I've been reading up on that, you know, pixel art and the such, and part of studying pixel art, you know, at least in the little booklet that I have, is that they did cover the history of pixel art, at least, and in video games throughout the ages. And, you know, I feel like it is an art form, maybe not in the way we imagine it nowadays, but in a much more expansive and incorporative manner than we perceive, because there were so many sprite limitations that they had to make so many cuts and remove so many corners to represent something in a video game that you know, they changed basic art things into symbols, and that in itself is an art form. You know what I mean? To simplify like that. Yeah.
My question is pixel art the first recorded digital art form that we know of?
Oh boy. See, I don't know that. That's an interesting question.
Yeah, it is.
It could be.
I would like to believe it is because presuming we're at the advent, at the beginning of the internet, right? One of the first things that got created is, of course, work programs, stuff like that. And presumably very soon entertainment. I would say, I think entertainment is one of the early applications of computers after they were no longer a job, right? So what I'd like to believe is that pixel art was probably the first type of art because it was kind of easy to do. And it would have been quite interesting to see how they, or if they consider it before they invented a mouse, right? Because in the very early computer days, people didn't have access to a mouse and they just used their keyboard to go around, which is really hard.
Well, when you're like saying pixel art, like, yes, it was the first because pixel is just a technology term for the little dot of light on your screen. And back then, they only had extremely small resolutions, like 200, I'm making up a number, 240 by 360. So you could see very clearly every individual pixel. So all art was pixel art. Just because that was the medium back then. They didn't have enough detail to do an actual traditional painting. Get my point?
Yeah, they don't get across the same range of value detail as you can today. Sounds fair.
I mean, they actually used, I totally forget the name of this device, right? But they did use something where they would sketch out the art on paper first, and then they would use some sort of weird pen thing to kind of transcribe it onto a computer, you know, without a mouse. Yeah, see if I can actually, you know what, you guys can keep talking. I can see if I can find the actual name.
I think we're actually put it down with original pixel art and we can move on. So it did develop over the years. And it did also govern some kind of score from traditional art community, if I remember correctly. We'll get into that in a second. What I'd like to talk about before we do that is photography, which isn't necessarily digital art because cameras originally weren't digital devices, right? But I think it's quite interesting to see this as a kind of parallel line to how digital art is presumably been evolving. So what do you guys know about the history of photography?
Really long exposure times at the beginning.
Yeah,
You gotta
nobody
sit
smiled
still.
because of those. You just had to sit there, and it was considered like a super serious thing to get a picture taken.
Yeah.
It was. So the first camera was invented in 1950, if I remember correctly. No, never mind. It was invented it wasn't invented in 1950. No, it was invented in 1550, and it was a camera obscura, which is just a very specially treated photo paper. And you can, I think you take about 15 minutes to half an hour to take a photo. So obviously it needs to be static stuff, and it also faded really fast. So what they did do is they took the photo and then they sketched out the things from the photo, which is posing. There's a term for it nowadays as well, and it's very scorned upon in the artist community as well. But it was one of the major tracing. Thank you. Yeah, it was one of the major art forms with photography, because originally it was very slow, right? And then what photography did? Go ahead.
I think we can excuse it, right? if tracing in that case, because I mean the actual original thing disappears. It's just gone, and so you kind of need to trace it to keep it alive more.
I do agree, because it did fade, right? And then eventually they made two types of photo papers which didn't fade, and they shortened the times more and more. So photography just got better over the ages. And then eventually we got to a point where it only took a few seconds to take a photo. And those cameras got cheaper every year, every week, maybe. So it was originally a hobby for very rich people, right? You need to be wealthy and afford a lot of time, a lot of things in order to take a photo. And you'd also need to treat the plates beforehand, so you couldn't just take an instant photo as you do nowadays. That's one of the biggest inventions. So the invention of instant photography with plates which didn't need to be treated changed the whole phase of the art form. And at that point, it wasn't considered an art form yet because it took so long and it didn't get great results. But at some point, a picture was taken from raising a banner in the War of Vietnam, I believe, which has since then started the entire direction of war photography as a form of propaganda, because it inspired a ton of people from America to heavily support the war because they had something visual, right? And that's how photography got to be so big as it is nowadays, because almost everyone is a photographer. And then in the 1950s, what actually happened is that Polaroid developed their first cameras. And they were the first cameras of their kind because they instantly put out the photo. And to date, they're the only ones who have been able to do it to this quality, to this extent, because they had a secret formula. Unfortunately, eventually, Polaroid went out of business, and this formula has in fact not been recovered as of yet, so we have no idea how Polaroid specifically worked. They had some kind of chemical secret, which is a fun tidbit. And then as photography got better and better, and eventually it also got digital, another big thing with digital photography is that before the advent of digital cameras, photographers had to treat all the things themselves, close the lenses, and estimate, calculate, predict how things would move if they wanted to capture a motion picture. And eventually it all got digitized. That was from Nixon, from Japan. So that's a big one, meaning that photographers could just focus on composition and on the general view. Beforehand, they'd have to focus on everything, which is quite a lot. And then at that point, photography was so realistic that a lot of artists were starting to either go out of business or changing to become photographers or trying to supplant photography, right? And that's what started the entire modern genre of painting. The more unrealistic ones, Impressionism, Expressionism, all those things, which are not necessarily realism. Because up to this point, the only way to see a realistic rendition of the world was art, which is why realism was so big. I mean, if you look at the Renaissance painters, they were great masters. And at that point, the question was, why do we need Renaissance painters or Renaissance level painters who cost a ton of money and need a ton of time when you can also just take a photo and frame it as well? So,
See,
yeah.
That's curious. I never actually thought about that, how artists would consider something like photography to be the end of art, It's like, oh no, here comes, photography. What are we going to do? Like the idea that paintings and the such would become obsolete, I mean, it's kind of a repeated pattern in the world, with people seeing new technology rise up and believing it'll be the end of one thing or another. Like, wasn't there this thing with TV as well? How people were worried that with TV nobody would ever listen to the radio anymore. I mean, we still do,
Yeah, in fact, I guess we listen to the radio more often than we watch TV nowadays. Because there's the internet. But for our next topic, I'd like to ask Impy again. What do you know about musicians' response to the advent of digital music, or how did the entire process work?
Not a lot. Well, again, we have to make a further distinction between fully digital on a computer and then actually
I'm talking the start of things, right?
Yes, I mean,
let's say electric music.
With all art forms, you have your purists. Like, oh, you have to use electricity in your guitar? Oh, that's not real music, man. Well, they didn't have that accent back then, probably. But the first electric guitar was around 1930s. And I mean, that's first electric instrument. That'd be pretty widespread.
Jesus Christ.
So how did people respond to the first electric guitar? Was it well received or was it more frowned upon?
Let me try and remember. No, I can't remember. Well received is what I would guess. Because musicians like creating stuff. Now, I'm just being general. But it's what I'd like to think about all artists. It's just art and it's just noise. So as a musician, you hear a noise. And then the electric guitar doesn't, without effects and pedals and stuff, it doesn't actually sound that different than a guitar. So I would wager that at the beginning, it was really just an amplified guitar that you could play through speakers and record easier. So
Which
I
is
think
a nice thing to have.
Yeah, I think the consensus was probably, okay, cool, it's another type of guitar. And there were people who were not into it, and there were more people who were into it. But the first electric guitar was turned into a whole model. It was commercially sold and available. So, there wasn't a whole lot of people going, I don't like it. It made money. That's specific with the electric guitar.
Talking about, I don't like it and making, Heck, would you like to say something?
Yeah, see, it was quite different with digital art. I believe, I wasn't around for this because I didn't start with digital art until like 3-4 years ago or something like that, right? But way at the beginning, I'd say like early, I don't know, goodness, I just saw a recent like YouTube tutorial on this, on like digital art, and they mentioned it. And that was like, oh God, I'm guessing that was like 5-ish years old, something like that. They were talking about how digital art was not respected at all, by people who like traditional art. It was seen as critics. Yeah, exactly. It was seen as this like completely wrong thing. It's like, how dare you try and mix the beauty of like sitting there for hours with a pencil with sitting there for hours with a pen. A digital art pen.
Yeah, so tell us about the history of that a bit, because I do know part of the reason why digital art is usually worth far less. But I'd like to hear your research, so share your insights.
Oh, well, see, I didn't
why is digital art trash?
I didn't read much into the discrimination in articles, but I can kind of understand where these traditionalists, I suppose we can call them, come from, right?
Yes.
Because it is this completely new thing. It almost seems like cheating, in a way. And I guess that's what makes a lot of people very angry, because you have this insane access to pens and resizing and rescaling and editing. You can sit there and you can make a sketch and, whoa, whoops, I made the arm too large. And you don't have to erase anything or redraw it. You just, select it and shrink it up a little bit. Boom, done. Or, the fact that you even have layers. That's a huge part of digital art, and it's just not present, at all.
I disagree. You can use it in traditional art.
Yeah.
You can use sketches and have a very light pencil in order to stimulate layers. You can even use layers if you have to correct paper. It does take more effort, though.
Of course, but
other thing is,
yeah. God damn it, Summer! Every time. The point is, right? It's a lot easier digital art. And
this point you're talking about, is it a digitally or a traditionally drawn?
With digital art, with layers.
So it's not a point worth considering. Okay, then.
What? Sorry, Summer. You can't make cryptic jokes by yourself. I won't understand.
Because it's digital art, right? So digital art is worthless.
Summer, for goodness sakes, remember a couple of days ago when we were doing that lesson and you kept talking about magic and I had no idea what you're talking about?
Oh, yes, I do.
Yeah, it's the same case now.
See, I was just making a meta joke because we're talking about how digital art is seen as worth less or even worthless in regards to the traditional one. Since you said it was a digital point, I just presumed, well, it's worthless.
There you go. Yeah. That was the joke. Glad we got there.
So glad.
Boom, got him.
So glad these jokes can be explained all the time.
Sorry, yeah.
Just makes them so much funnier.
I didn't mean to say that you can't sketch in traditional art. Obviously you can, but I mean in traditional art you can't just click on a layer and then boom, it's gone and then you don't need that sketch anymore. Or reduce the opacity of the sketch, But yeah, I would see that as pissing off a lot of people. I mean, it would piss me off too, now if we introduce an even more modern form of digital art that just beams what you have in your head perfectly into reality, I mean, that would make me mad as well, because then it would seem
really why?
Oh yeah, of course, because it would seem like all the effort I had put in to learning how to use these tools or learning how to use form or perspective would be completely worthless, And I think that's what
I can't agree with that. But
oh yeah, sure. Well, obviously there's still some worthwhile parts and information that was retained and will always be useful, right? But I'm just saying that's probably what traditional artists had in mind, It's like they spend years and years on their craft and now there's just a tool, There's a button that can pull up perspective lines for you, There's selection tools, there's layers, there's stuff that they had to hone and learn and dance around because they didn't have those methods or technology that we can just, abuse as much as we please now.
It's kind of interesting you mentioned that, because that's pretty much what music has done. We had a traditional and then we had a semi-digital, which I would associate with the digital period of art. And then we actually had the third era, I'll call it an era, of music production with the advent of the computer. Because, so you had, your guitars and stuff, you had your synthesizers, which you could record and all that. And it would, you pretty much had all the features of layers, looping, correcting, going back and changing the sounds, postscript. So I'd say that's what art is at now. You have your digital and your traditional, but then you now have your DAWs, your digital audio workstations, where you can actually go back and change everything, where it's so much easier to do everything. It requires no skill. You can even download pre-made tracks, add one sample onto it, add your voice, and you got a hit song. I mean, so that's
songs nowadays. No, I'm not. Let's not be mean. There's still talent going into those.
That's music is pretty much in the third era, and you still do have a bunch of people who are, a lot of the older people, the older generation who grew up with, just guitars and synthesizers and jazz. They're like, oh, traditional or no. modern music is all garbage, and it's because you could make it so easy. What's even the point? You don't have to learn anything.
Mhm.
It's the same attitude as with art. With digital art, it's just now it's there again. It's just people don't like adopting new things.
Yeah. I mean, it is silly because essentially all we're doing at the end of the day is making art more available for everybody, right? The easier it gets, the more people can make art. And, I don't know. I can see both sides of the argument very well, right? Because on one hand, it's like, great, everybody can make art now, and it's more available than ever. And that's nice, right? Because you do get a bunch of new artists who you wouldn't have had otherwise. But then at the same time, you do get that infestation of like a bunch of crap people, coming in here with their crap art, doing crap things. And it's like, great, we've made it easier for everybody. Great, it's better, to have more artists. But Jesus Christ, it's so hard to get noticed when you're trying to fight against wave and wave of people who pick up the craft once, drop it because it's too difficult, and then their ugly stain of a mark is just left in the history and wave of art in which you were trying to float up on.
I don't think it's like that.
Which it's an interesting question almost. So, I mean, we had
it's almost an
art.
Interesting question, so it's not quite interesting.
Let him finish.
We have let me finish. Jeez. We have old art where we have the long drawn out sonatas and forms of music. We have hour-long plays. We have realistic portraits. We have all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And as the progression of art, including music and digital art drawing, as humanity progresses, we're getting technology to better refine our creation of these art styles. So does that mean that we're in some way heading toward the magnum opus of humanity? Like, is this how music and art is supposed to be made? Because we could see it's being adopted into the culture. Like, pop music is just ridiculously successful because it's so accessible. It's so connecting with how people experience music that, like, everyone pretty much can get behind it and understand it. And everybody can look at a piece of art that was drawn on digital and say, yeah, that's really nice. So, I mean, like, is there one eventual art form that we're all heading towards? Because everything's being made easier, so more people are doing it, and it's just, conglomeration of everything. You get what I'm saying?
I do. Yes. That's an interesting point, actually, because I did see that, God, like, ages and ages ago, somewhere on one of MatPat's video, Game Theory. He was talking about that, where we would go, with art forms. And what he noticed was actually that in memes, we are pretty much going through the different forms of art, the different art periods, Renaissance, modernism, impressionism, just in different ways and at a greatly accelerated rate, Like, I mean, everybody has seen how memes have evolved, right? And I think it's a perfect example, a perfect, quick, short look at art that can show you how it can develop, What did it start out with? Like what you'd have, what's a classic one? Like Bad Luck Brian, It's like, ooh.
Rage comics.
Yeah, it's like I got to school early, but my school was closed or something like that. It's so innocent. And then nowadays we've got like floating, completely distorted images of people in dank corridors and like some weird shadow beast. And it's like me and the boys at 3 a.m. looking for beans. And that's the caliber of memes we have nowadays.
We'll talk about memes another time.
The point
and we'll also get to Imperfect's questions after our next round. Or maybe 2 rounds. But yeah, your point?
The point is that art is, constantly looping. So I don't think that we are heading towards one certain art style that will, be dominant. I think we're going to we're going to experience periods of return, where we will regress more back to like Renaissance, Impressionism, etc., because it will just be a natural turn for the art, scene. So, yeah.
Since you mentioned loops, where art thou loops, brother?
See what I mean?
Okay.
I mean, yeah, sorry, just one last thing. You do see more rage comics, because there is more of a demand in memes that people make more rage comics. And there are some new rage comics out there, some old ones popping back up. So yeah, that's exactly what it is, right? We're looping back right now.
Meme culture right here. To get back to original points, we were talking about digital art being a more refined version. And we were also talking about how it was considered by you, Heck, to be worth just the same as traditional art. And I can tell you that it will not be considered worth the same thing by the art community probably ever, because there's a big difference between digital art and original art. And that's the existence of an original. For example, let's take the Mona Lisa. That's a very good example, because there is one Mona Lisa. And there's always only going to be one of it, of every art piece.
Yeah.
And so that means that people know of the existence of an original, and subconsciously it makes them feel more safe, more secure when spending money on art pieces, which is why traditional art pieces usually are valued higher than digital ones, right? Because digital art piece can be infinitely regurgitated, viewed, and reconstructed.
Oh yeah,
So it makes it feels like it's like substantial, as you talked about at the very beginning of this podcast, in regards to music instruments, whether they're digital or traditional.
I do see that, right? It does seem to, at least on a surface level, for people to take away value from the piece if one could just take the file, press copy, press paste, and boom, now there's two in existence, But I mean, at the same time, isn't there a certain beauty to it as well, right? I mean, if I wanted to go see the Mona Lisa right now, I'd go all the way to Paris, right? I think it's at the Louvre.
Yes.
I would sit there, I would wait in line for hours and hours. I'd fight my way through slogs of tourists, which, by the way, I have done all this. I did go to see.
Please don't fight tourists.
And I would get right to the entrance, and I would be unable to get in the room because there's like, there's like 200 Asians, like, not discriminating here, not being racist here at all. It's just a fact. When I went there, there's like 200 Asians fighting and pushing and snap, and all you can see is like the not flash, sorry, because I don't think flash is allowed. All you can hear is like the clicking of cameras and people like talking and just sitting there talking loudly. And I can tell you, I've never felt sicker in my life, because I went to Paris and I think all the good French restaurants were closed, and then we went to go to some weird Asian restaurant at the side of the street. Oh boy. Then I got a cold. It was nice. Got coronavirus like years ago before it was popular.
Sure you did, buddy.
But yeah.
Sure you did.
Well, I mean, with digital art, right? Let's say I make a fantastic piece on par with the Mona Lisa. Let's say I want to show the world. Well, boom, copy paste, post it online. Everybody has a copy. Isn't that a lot more beautiful than being forced to view the scarcity and the fragility of an object through the lens of, like, basically, I don't know, an exploiting capitalist system,
Jeff, I've got an answer for you, and the answer is no.
There you go. Right?
Happy?
Well, yeah. I mean, look, it's not like there's less effort, in a beautiful art piece just because it can be copied or replicated, It doesn't
the
mean
Mona
that...
Lisa can also be copied and replicated.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, not in the same way, right?
Yeah, you can't have the original. There's not more than one original, and that gives a sense of value to things. Scarcity is a very big thing in markets, right?
A superficial sense
supply
of value, right?
and demand. No, it doesn't. It's not necessarily superficial. No, that's not for us to judge.
Wouldn't you say so?
It's also not. It doesn't matter whether I agree with you. I'm just one person. I'm not the art community.
Certainly, but look at
neither of us is qualified to tell them how to think.
Fine. Well, the art community, if this is their argument that the scarcity gives it value, then one should look at diamonds, right? I think that is the best example of how scarcity is only superficial value. There are so many diamonds in the world, but
I know diamonds are a different thing. Diamonds are valuable because, first of all, there's one guy who has a monopoly on it, or one, not a guy, but a company.
Yeah.
And there's quite a lot of diamonds, so they're very common, in fact.
Mm-hmm.
Also, they're very expensive in regards to wedding rings, which is also a scam, which they invented I think, in the 1960s. They just told people you were supposed to buy expensive diamond rings for wedding, which is a complete sham.
Mm-hmm.
And before that, people just got married and didn't have to buy expensive stuff. So I wouldn't compare art to diamonds because it's a completely different thing. With artificial scarcity kept by one company in order to make a large profit and also tricking people, as opposed to it actually being a scarcity and impossible to replicate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, moving on, I'll state just the next thing, because you also mentioned how you can just undo your mistakes in digital art. And in fact, this is, so let's loop back to photography for a bit. Photography has spawned those surrealistic images, surrealistic styles, and in turn, photography itself has also started getting more surrealistic vibes. So occasionally people intentionally blur their photos in order to achieve the same style that people did with paintings. So it's really funny for me to see how photography just crawls up on art, and then art goes somewhere else, and the photography just keeps crawling on. So yeah. The other thing is that in traditional art, some people value these imperfections and flaws, which you mentioned, which you can't always undo in traditional art, right? So you have to work them into your piece, meaning your piece gets a lot more of something called character. Your piece is far more, I wouldn't say unique. I'd say it's got its own personality. Whereas in digital art, you can make everything flawless, which on some level makes it very bland.
Oh, yeah.
So I would like for you to talk about those things for a few minutes. But before that, I would like Imperfect to talk about anything in regards to music with those things. Is there something like that with music? Because I can imagine it going both ways, right? That some traditional instruments have their own appeals by being played differently, by each musician and interpreter having their own style, instead of it just being a replica, a digital file. Or I could say that just there is a pure form of any music, and that's the best one. So have your heart out. I'll be right back. I gotta leave the cat out. Get the cat out.
Oh, I gotta get the cat out. Well,
I say we use this time to crap on summer.
I hate summer. It's gonna be hot soon.
Summer sucks.
Well, that's all the crapping for today.
I hate you guys too. Also, I can still hear you when you're talking.
God damn it.
Oh.
The door is like 2 steps away. I'm just plugging out my headphones.
I can't believe this.
Man, I was being nice to you the whole time. And Heck was being mean. I was trying to defend you,
What?
Summer.
No, he just straight up came in here and he was like, you know,
yes, he came in here, I'm sure.
He opened the door and he's like, you know what? Screw this art talk. I hate.
I do.
I hate. Yes, I also hate. Okay. Imperfect choosing music. Imperfect.
Character. So, there's a couple things.
Summer, who picked out this goddamn
character
topic?
In music, as in the specificity of the sound has been played by a particular person or group, is still extremely important to many people, especially in classical music, because you have your sheet music that people play, and even though it's still notated the same way for each paper, it's the same, it can be played differently by each different person. So, we have pieces by Beethoven or whatever, and as an up and coming artist or musician in the classical industry, it's pretty much a given that you're going to have to reinterpret it at some point. I forget the actual term for doing it yourself, whatever. Because, you have to show them what your particular timbre is about. Timbre as in Timbre.
Yeah.
I don't know. So, like, it is part of your character, and then it's still the same way with any instrument. Someone just died. Okay. Like, every single person playing an instrument is going to sound a little bit different. Usually it doesn't matter much, but like when you're blowing into a woodwind instrument, you have different lung capacity than someone else. So all these things will sound different. And fun fact.
First of all, Heck just unjoined and joined again.
I just accidentally
he's talking so much these days. I don't know what's happened to him. The other thing is people who play any kind of blow instrument. How do you call them?
Woodwind.
Well, there's wind instrument actually.
There's woodwind instruments, and then there's brass instruments. So you have your trumpets and your trombones, which are brass stuff in that area, and then you have your saxophones and your clarinets and such, which is woodwind.
Yeah,
and I can.
So those people have a really awesome lung capacity, so they're incredibly great at diving. So if your plan is to become a professional diver or go deep diving, start playing a woodwind or brass instrument. If you allow for attention, Impy, since I'm talking right now, have there been people who have been...
How dare you!
Who have been able to interpret Liszt? Because I was told the guy had freakishly long finger spans, and so write incredibly complex pieces. Tell me a bit about Liszt in the piano community or art community.
I don't know much specifically. I have been around some musicians, and they're all like...
I'm shocked.
They are all like, oh, I can't play that. So, I mean, there are ways you can get around it, just not playing some notes, stuff like that. But that's part of the character in his original work and how you play it. Just because some things can't be done just because of physical limitations, etc.
I mean, at this point, I feel like we can also try and draw the line between musician and composer, right?
Can we? Have there been composers who weren't musicians?
I mean, there wasn't. Who was it? Was it Chopin? Something like that. Who was it? There was some guy who wrote incredible, like insanely difficult piano pieces. I don't think. Huh?
Well, not. I mean, he's not the only one. But what? Who did what? He wrote complicated stuff.
Yeah, and then he didn't. I think. What's it? All the comments on YouTube always say he only did it to torture the pianist.
I'm not exactly sure.
Oh, well,
but it's totally possible.
Food for thought.
I remember something similar about Mozart, because apparently he had to write a piece for a singer whom he didn't like, and that singer had a peculiar habit. Thank you. Which is whenever they sang a low note, they put their head down on their chin, down on their chest. Whenever they sang a high note, they flung it up. So what Mozart did, he wrote the piece with a lot of instant changes between low and high notes. So the singer would have to be permanently nodding up and down just to annoy them. It was still a good piece, though. But yeah. Imperfect. Please do move on with your main point about interpretations.
Interpretations. So let's see. I was talking about classical music, especially, and then it moved on to instruments in general. It's always played differently. Well, then, as recording started happening and commercialization and mass widespread dispersion of music started happening, you can really see it very clearly in how music is recorded and how people listen to it. Because people only listen to, traditionally, like on the radio, only one or two different versions of the song is played. Typically one version is just a shorter version of the longer one. Like you have your radio versions of a song. So pretty much people only hear one version of a song. And as we have just heard, it can change. The song can actually change every time somebody plays it because, maybe they're out of breath at a different part, or their fingers missed a string on a guitar, anything like that. So it's when people play things at a live show, you also don't have the mixing and mastering that digital music is partial to. It's mixing and mastering is just which instruments sound louder in the whole song, which instruments, hit harder, what's their sound waves like. Just mixing and mastering gives you extreme specificity in what you want this thing to sound like, whereas playing it live or such, there's really not that capability at all. And then with some artists that I like, specifically Dance Gavin Dance, I think I've mentioned that before, really great band, but dealing with the voice in particular in reference to mixing and mastering, it just doesn't sound as good live to me, because I've gotten used to the way it sounds, where the voice is pretty much the most powerful thing in the mix, and then the guitars are right next to it, and you can have your right and your left channels, so you get to hear really like they're in a room around you and they're playing to their fullest capabilities at that time. And then you get to a show. I haven't been to a show, but I've seen in videos and stuff. You get to a show where they've been playing their heart, they've been screaming their brains out for the past 3 weeks. They're tired, and it's just maybe they drank a little bit too much before the show.
Yeah.
So
what kind of musicians do you listen to?
Dragon Force pretty much gets drunk every time they go on stage.
Oh.
Okay, since we have Heck talking right now, MP, I'd like for you to wrap up here. Is there something you'd like as closing words?
It was nice knowing you all, and talk to you next podcast.
Please, just look ahead. No, MP, look ahead. Close your eyes and imagine a nice farm full of rabbits, very soft and fluffy. Stroke them. Try to imagine it. A lovely field full of flowers. So yeah, that's how Of Mice and Men basically ends.
Spoiler, goddammit. But yeah, that's interesting to me, what MP was just saying.
Good. And give us something equally interesting.
I feel like in actual art, not music, making mistakes.
Did you just insult music?
It's not how I meant it.
Actual art.
That's
the good kind.
Yeah, you know what? Music. What is that? Like ding dong, bing bong stuff,
Okay.
Who needs it?
Drawn art?
In drawn art, right? It is curious, what MP was saying. It really feels like music, there is like this perfect version you could strive for. If you had all the equipment and all the time in the world, you could create the perfect conditions you want, to have the user experience the music exactly how you wrote it. But in art, I don't know, in drawn art, I feel like it's a lot more fluid than that. There's never one perfect way the artist could intend it. Oh God, am I talking like in roundabouts here?
We're talking about the death of the author in regards to art.
Yeah, I suppose that's where I'm going with this, huh? Yeah.
I do see that, because it's
it's hard to phrase.
Just like I was mentioning, I wouldn't really go see a live version of what I'm listening to, because to me, that's what I'm listening to is perfect. Like it's been scrutinized, the whole entire thing, so that it's formulated to give you maximum impact on what you're listening to. Whereas a live version, there are so many different things that you really want to remove the artist, because they've already made it, but you do want to remove those possible imperfections from it.
We all want to remove things that are imperfect.
And there are people that like hearing that. It's just me. I like how it sounds when I first heard it and continue to hear it. But yeah, I want to remove the artist from a lot of what I'm listening to.
You hear it here first. Person called Imperfect likes listening to things that are imperfect, and also wants to remove artists. No, thanks for your insight.
You're welcome. Thanks, Heck. Do you want to reformulate that or add anything that you thought about it?
See, I don't think I can formulate my idea for that right now. Maybe I'll
Well,
come
that
to
sounds
it
like a
later,
you problem.
but actually, what were you asking before? in
My
case I
question
summarize?
is, imperfections are a big thing in traditional art. So how do you feel about imperfections as part of the character?
There we go.
And as a follow-up question, is it possible that the ability to remove all mistakes and do things over and over again in digital art leads to perfectionism, as in bad types of perfectionism where you just overdo things? Because I've noted that with you, that you always mention that you could improve your work, and you always can. So how do you know in digital art when you hit the threshold where it's good enough and you move on?
Yeah, okay, that's actually like two different subjects and two
It
big
is.
topics. And I'm just going to start with the first one, right? And then you're going to have to remind me of the second one because I'm going to focus on
Sounds
it.
good.
Right. So imperfections in digital art,
No, that's the second one. Start with the other one.
Oh, in traditional art?
That's the right one. So please, imperfections in traditional art. What are your thoughts on including them as part of the piece, as part of the appeal, as well as your personal thoughts on imperfections in art? And that's a nice segue into perfectionism and imperfections in digital art.
Well, I mean, what is an imperfection, really? What is imperfect? Yeah, but then a mistake is a mistake. Why would you call it an imperfection?
Because it's not as the piece is in an ideal world. It is not how the piece would appear.
But the way I see it is, if there's a glaring, obvious mistake in the piece, the artist will try and fix that, right? And the criticism towards digital art here is that it's easier to avoid those mistakes. Like, why would you draw a circle?
It's not easier to avoid them.
Well, I mean, Summer, let me finish here. You think this?
No.
The point is, right? I think the criticism here is that you don't have to put the effort in to learn how to draw a circle if you can just use the circle tool, right? And the thing is, actually, I have gone through, work like that. I have tried to use the circle tool and other tools, in my art to try and save myself some time. But the issue is the perfection of the circle tool, the balance of having a perfect circle is horrifying in any image, I'd say. Any image that an artist is trying to create, because it sticks out like an incredibly sore thumb. It is too smooth. It is the imperfections actually make things look a lot more natural. Do you know what I mean? So in a way, having imperfections doesn't mean that they are mistakes. They are just a part of it, right? They are what makes the art natural. And to want to remove imperfections would be to try and remove the human aspect of art, the natural aspect of it. And,
AI and art is actually a really interesting topic. If you guys are interested in learning more about that, there is a podcast I've been listening to by a very awesome artist and teacher. It is free on YouTube, and you can find it on your profile.
Of course it is.
Of course it is.
Head there. But yeah, that's why I say there's a clear distinction and mistakes. Because mistakes are something you strive to correct. Something looks wrong. You did the perspective wrong. You shaded wrong. But imperfections, it's like, oh, the shading is a little bit too dark. Or hey, it's extended a bit too far. It just makes it more natural. At the end of the day, we aren't taking pictures. We're not making photographs. We aren't trying to.
Hey, we are. Photography is a valid form of art, and hyperrealism is also.
In drawn art, right? Oh yeah, sure, hyperrealism, but that's a completely different topic.
No, it's drawn art.
Well, that's a subsection, right? There you go. I have other opinions about hyperrealism, right? But yeah, most of the time, there you go, in art, you aren't trying to copy the reality as closely as possible. It is more so about conveying reality, the emotion behind a piece. That's why in cartoons,
need to be reality, does it?
Huh?
Pardon the interruption. Doesn't need to be reality which we try to convey, or much rather our interpretation.
Oh yeah, sure. But the point is, at the end of the day, you're trying to convey a feeling. If you draw an apple, you just want the person to be like, that's an apple, and not, that's what I'd see when I go into the grocery store at 7. You know what I mean? That's why in cartoons you never have, or very rarely have, people with any sort of like humanistic, realistic proportions. You have big triangle faces, big squares, big really smoothed out, cheeks. It's because you know how that character makes you feel. You understand the emotion conveyed behind it. You understand the personality. That's an imperfection. You could even see that as an imperfection, but it is not a mistake. You get what I mean?
Yeah, kind of. My question is, how do you differentiate between imperfections and mistakes? And when are mistakes okay? Because they are okay at times.
I feel like mistakes are always okay, right? When would they not be okay?
When you just say it's my style to any mistake you make.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, at that point, it's not really a mistake anymore. You're just being an idiot, right?
Oh, come
and then
on.
that wouldn't be. Well, I mean, come on now, Summer. We all know people who sketch, with like very many thin lines to make one big line, and then they say that's just my style. I like a sketchy style. I enjoy this, and it's just laziness. All right.
Not always.
Well, not
yes,
always.
Oftentimes it is.
Oftentimes, yes. It's people who refuse to learn or put the time and effort in, because it is effort, to learn how to properly control and hold a pen even, you wouldn't think of this kind of stuff.
Yes, talking about that, there's good tutorials for traditional as well as digital artists.
Here it comes.
On YouTube on a free channel called Proco.
Yeah, that would be a mistake, I would feel, if you do it, like you said, if you do something clearly wrong and you convey it in a wrong way and then you do not seek to correct it, I mean, even if you seek to correct it, it's still a mistake, right? But then it's less bad. I don't know if I'm making sense here. And then an imperfection is when you know how to, I don't know, let's say shade a sphere. And like I said, you just shade a little bit too much. The shadow's a bit too dark, but it's still all within the margins of what you intended to do, what you knew was right to do in the reflection of, God damn it, how do you say this properly? It is still in the margin of what you intended to do, right? When somebody draws a very sketchy image, maybe it was their intention to make it super sketchy, right? But most of the time it is more so a crutch because they do not know how to do it properly, right? You get what I mean? Does that make sense?
Kind of. What I'm trying to read or getting from you is that you need to set yourself boundaries for how much mistakes you allow.
I suppose you could see it like that, yeah. But yeah, Impy, do you want to comment on any of this before we move on to what's the next part?
Yeah, I mean, I can talk about part of it specifically dealing with music. Also, I mean, dealing with mistake versus imperfection, there's really no way that I know of to differentiate between them except the artist's intention. And like dealing with, well, it's just my style, man. I mean, the only way to get around that is it's a mistake if the artist was trying, or if the artist was in a mindset where they were trying to learn and they were objectively proven wrong and they admitted it was a mistake. Like that's really the only time if the artist admits it's a mistake. I think. Because like imperfection. And I mean with the music, it's extremely subjective, so there's really no such thing as a mistake, really. Because you have all these new musicians who just make out a simple do 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 do. It's like, okay, cool. And it's super boring, but they're like, no, man, that's how I wanted it to sound. You're like, oh, okay. I mean, sure. I mean, it's not going to sell. No one's going to listen to it, but I mean, go ahead.
I suppose. I mean, that's where you start drawing the distinction between mistakes and just bad art. Yeah.
It's just some things are just not very good. I mean, you call it imperfection, but at the end of the day, like it's not imperfect. It's still in the, it's still using the scale. It's still a semitone or whatever. There's nothing technically bad about it. It's just boring. It's like it's just bad. It's not a mistake. It's not an imperfection. It's just boring. And then dealing with imperfections, like I mentioned, music is totally subjective, but something about the imperfection, that there is no perfect song out there. It is up to the artist. Like there's no perfect art piece out there. It's all up to the artist. That's something I quite enjoy about music, that the artist is free to do whatever they want. And it's really cool. There's this one song that I quite love. It's one of my favorite songs ever. It's Love by Lana Del Rey. And then you have that song, and right in the chorus, she sings a line, "To be young and in love."
And to cut out summer? I mean, Impy. It's
okay.
my instinct to say summer.
Come on, just because people cut out, it's not me.
It's just my instinct to say summer. When somebody cut out, there.
Yeah, true. Okay, well, she sings the song. Right after she sings a line, there's a gunshot sound. Nowhere else in the song is there guns anywhere. Nowhere is it ever presented that there would be any form of violence. It just makes zero sense in the overall song. But I find it really works. I mean, it doesn't connect with anything else. And I don't know why it's there. So, it can be a mistake, an imperfection, but as a part of the whole composition, I really enjoy it because it adds this little bit of oomph to that little ending of the line. So, I mean, and in a digital age where they do have full control over every single sound, I'm pretty much, you have to believe that everything that comes out that the artist says as a finished piece, you just have to assume that this is all not a mistake and it's not an imperfection. It's how they wanted it to look. And then you just have to do your best to interpret it.
I
think that was
differentiate a bit because you were saying it's not a mistake, it's how they wanted it to look. I believe that occasionally artists, these mistakes or some imperfections still be in there, even though they are a style. So it can be both a mistake and how they want the piece to look.
But I mean, if they want it to look like that, can you actually call it a mistake? You can accidentally mess up drawing a circle, but then you look at it and say, "Oh, well, that actually fits." So it was a mistake in the beginning, but now it's incorporated into the full art piece. So is it a mistake in the end? You tell me.
Yes. But it doesn't matter. Yeah, I get what you're saying. I can agree with the sentiment. I personally would call it a mistake, but it doesn't matter because I could see why it's no longer a mistake because it works as part of a fun composition. Moving on, we heard, especially you, MP, have talked a bit about those new people who just download stuff, put a voice over it, and synthesize things very cheaply. Heck has also talked a bit about new artists being just giving up very soon and burying the great works in trash. I have heard a great deal of talk about either music becoming more and more bland as time goes on, so it just gets more boring, and something very similar of art, because most new digital artists apparently really dig anime styles, so they focus on those, and great deal of many other art styles gets lost. So who of you would like to go first and talk about the evolution of modern art, of your modern art style, respectively, as well as it becoming more bland or more exotic?
I'm sorry, MP. I'm going to have to go first because I do have a certain level of anger against those kinds of
Okay, MP, would you like to go first?
Sorry, I'll
because we want to have Heck's anger build up.
No, I can't let it fester. I'll get
you
like
want
sick.
To be muted.
They're muted. Good. No,
Tyler.
It's not working. No,
Tyler,
I don't mind.
Tell me whether you're okay with TJ going first.
Because he can go first.
Is it all right with you?
Yes. Go ahead.
TJ, hit us up.
Oh God! All right, enough with the TJB.
Wait, I changed my mind.
Okay, yeah.
Goodness, can't change your mind
Okay,
after the.
TJ, tell us. Because you're both TJ.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
All right, so well, I mean, do any of you know why the anime style from beginner artists always looks so weird and ugly?
Because they didn't do their fundamentals.
Because they can't draw.
Well, okay, that's both.
Impede them with the big
But
bum.
the main issue is that the most appealing and the most drawn to part of anime is the eyes, right? The eyes are always there, you know, and they stick out and they're super detailed. And so what a lot of beginner artists will do is they'll focus on eyes. They'll redraw and draw eyes again and again and again and do them so beautifully, and they will have no idea how to draw anything else. So it will be a horribly, you know, flat, just papery face, you know, with incredibly detailed eyes and a mouth that looks like an upside down D, and like a freaking nose that's just like a triangle.
Well, to be fair, those noses are reduced to triangles. And I personally quite enjoy that aspect, because it's a very nice way to stylize noses.
Sure, certainly.
But I also enjoy noses.
But it looks incredibly unbalanced. It's messy, and I've seen artists who have, like, I don't want to point fingers here, right? But there is an artist in another Discord server who, you know, I didn't see any art from yet, and I was like, oh, how long have you been doing art? 7 to 8 years. I was like, Jesus Christ, you know. Artists, there are artists who make art for like 7 to 8 years. They are freaking amazing most of the time. And then he started showing off some of his pieces, and it was the same. You know, it was the same as that beginner anime, disproportioned, just unpleasant style to me, at the very least, to look at, right? And it's just so horrible because people get into that fad. You know, they want to immediately jump into anime and stuff. And you can do
out
it.
There a bit, please give us the last sentence again.
You know, people just want to jump into that anime style, right? Because they watch anime, they're like, hey, I want to do that, you know? And they just jump into that immediately. And sure, you can do it, right? There are plenty of artists who brute force their way into being good at that piece, you know, good at that style. But the issue is, if you get good at that one style and you only do that one style, you have nowhere else to go anymore. You've essentially backed yourself into an art corner, you know? If you, all right,
which
and some
is
are
relevant
like this.
if you want to branch.
Oh yeah,
or
sure.
if you want to get.
But take it this way,
you
right?
Still need to take.
You'll like this, Summer,
but it's acceptable.
Because Proco did mention this as well, which is that if you start with just the most basic, fundamental, you know, way to draw humans, you go through everything. You go through form, perspective, you know, lighting, and the mannequin and figure drawing, and you learn how to construct figures. Fundamentally, you will be able to branch out into all those styles, you know? It's not like, it doesn't mean you can't do anime later. You definitely can, but then you, let's say you don't like anime anymore. There's your semi-realistic style. There's your realistic style, you know? It's like, you got all these insane options, you know?
I have to say, it's not quite this easy. You will still have to spend some amount of.
Oh, yeah. But it is nowhere near as hard as if you were to take the anime style and it's like, all right, now let me try and draw a proportionate human being, you know?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And
start from the fundamentals, everyone.
Exactly.
Always.
You always
everything.
have to start with the fundamentals. And it's the most unavoidable, harshest truth about art that there is. You can avoid it as long
harsh?
Oh, well, because it's boring, right?
No, it's not.
It is, Summer.
It's one of the most fun things I have done.
To the majority, I would say.
I disagree.
That light form perspective are the most boring things you could do in art.
And I disagree. I believe to the majority, those are some of the most fun things to do.
Practice is the boring part.
It's
practice
also not boring to practice, no.
No, most people think practice is boring, Summer.
I guess Summer and I are at complete polarity, because to me, the lessons and the are both incredibly boring.
To me, you're absolutely cutting out right now. I don't know. Well, AP, can you still make out what he's saying?
Mostly, sometimes it cuts out.
I was just saying, to me, both sides, you know, both practice and the theory of light and perspective were boring, and to Summer, both is interesting.
Well, we shall put you two We shall put you two as the extremes on either end. We'll meet in the middle and say people don't like practicing.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, but I have the reasons why. And so to expand on, it's not because practicing or the fundamentals are boring. It's because they haven't found the right teacher, the right way to learn, and the right motivation.
That's certainly true. I mean, I can see how fun it is, right? If it weren't fun, I wouldn't be doing it at the end of the day, right? But I guess what Impy says rings most true, right? It is the incredible monotonous repetition, because people don't, like, at least I don't, and I believe a lot of people are similar to me in this aspect. They don't look at art and think, oh boy, I can't wait to go home and draw a bunch of squares in different shapes and sizes and with different lighting. They want to go home and they're like, man, I can't wait to draw this cool action scene I'm imagining. Or, I can't wait to like draw fire, or like, hey, this like cool fantasy hammer I have in my mind, But
and here's the thing, nothing stops them from doing that. That's the important part. Just because you practice doesn't mean you don't get to do the fun stuff. That's also what Procus says.
Certainly, right? But at the end of the day, you can recognize when the art isn't looking the way you want, Like, you'll look at your hammer or you'll look at your action scene and you'll be like, this is not what I envision at all. Because in your head, everything looks perfect. It's like, yes, I know exactly where what goes. But to translate that is the difficulty. Your hammer might look flat. The shading might be wrong. You'd be like, no, I don't like the perspective of this. It's just like completely like still on the page. It's just like no cool, way to look at it, And the reason it looks flat and boring and whatever to these people is because they haven't gone through those fundamentals. And if they want to get better, if they want to be able to bring forth what they envision in their head, to the fullest extent, they're going to have to go through the fundamentals. And that's why the fundamentals are this huge roadblock, because it seems like, this barrier, It's like, you want to make cool art, give the time, pay me this and that amount. And that's why I'm saying it is the greatest difficulty, in drawn art, that you have to go through these fundamentals and that you can't avoid them.
Yeah, I'll have to say one of the biggest things in art is patience. Patience in two things. First of all, patience with the basics, because with the boxes, for example, a lot of people rush through them. I've been guilty of this myself, so I'm redoing it.
I mean, me too.
The other thing is also patience with your personal pieces, because if you whip out a piece in 5 minutes, it's never going to look as good as one in 2 hours. The flip side of this is don't spend too much time on anything, because you also want to get good at art. So the best thing I figured to do so far is that you go through the basics, pace yourself as much as you can, and you draw the things you personally really like in the meantime. And then you go through the basics again and do the drawings you like again, and you'll just get gradually better. But you can intertwine those two things, because just doing the basics for 20 years is not going to be fun. But just drawing what you want for 20 years is not going to help you get much better.
Yeah, that is true.
So change things up.
Unfortunately.
Okay, keep on talking. You're making good points so far.
What you were saying does remind me of this. What was it? Was it Bruce Lee quote? I think it might be Bruce Lee. Do you know that? It's I think this is slightly applicable in this situation. Which is that he said, I do not fear the man who practiced 1,000 kicks once. I fear the man who practiced one kick 1,000 times. Right? And I believe, you can apply that to fundamentals and the basics of art, right?
Sure, yes, I'm also terrified of artists who have drawn things over and over again. They're really scary.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Those people just have commitment and they're crazy.
Yeah.
Unless they're you. In that case, I know they're just goofballs.
It is the scary part, right? And that's the real distinction between artists. It's not just about learning. It's not just about putting the time in. It's about putting the time in correctly. Like I said, you can brute force your way into a style and into it looking good. I know plenty of artists like that, right? But at the end of the day, if you had put the time into the same amount of time into fundamentals, your art would be even more clear, even more sharp. It would be just a multitude and multifaceted of amazing. And it's a real shame that, people don't want to face this truth, because it is a hard truth to face. I certainly don't like hearing this kind of stuff. I don't like hearing, oh, you forgot to do your basics practice when I have gone through, some of the basic lessons. But the truth of the matter is going through it once isn't enough. You have to do it over and over and over and over again. And you have to do it when you're sick of it, and you have to do it when you're, completely tired of it. You have to do it when you've drawn so many squares and never want to see a square in your life again, right?
I disagree. If you're in a state where you never want to see a square in your life, you've probably already committed an error. Because if you keep forcing yourself to do things that are no fun, you'll start associating the process of drawing with just unfun things. So if you have to force yourself to draw it, you're in kind of a tough spot. Because on the one hand, you want to achieve a state where you can force yourself to draw whatever you want, especially as a professional artist. There'll be lots of times when you personally don't feel like drawing, but you have to do it because you have already accepted a job, so you got to commit to it now.
Yep.
In which cases you'll need to force yourself to draw it, as well as improvement. On the other hand, if you force yourself to do things too much, you're going to be unable to enjoy it. And therefore, why would you ever pick art as a job? Because it's not for the money. People don't make a lot of money as artists.
That is a curious point, but I feel like in the reality of the situation, right, it will never get to that point. Because sooner or later,
Which point?
The point where you were like, hey, I am so sick of seeing a square, never want to see it again, right? Because what should happen, right, is you shouldn't just be doing the basics. You should still be exploring around and doing what you like, right? And then going back to practice the basics. And sooner or later, this kind of stuff will fade into your subconscious, right? You won't sit there and think, God, squares again. You'll just be like, it'll be a tool. It will be an asset in your repertoire. It will be the fundamental. That's why they call it that, by the way, of any piece you draw. You'll be like, I need to draw a book. And then you'll just draw out a rectangle, and then you'll start sketching the book on top of that, right? And you won't even notice you're doing that.
That's unconscious unconscious competence. We've covered it ages ago. Impy brought it up, actually.
Oh, boy.
But I believe we're done for drawing. So, Tyler, take it off. Not literally.
Take it all off, Tyler. Come on now.
What was the question again? Repeat the question.
The question is that nowadays people believe that, in your case, music has become more and more bland and mainstream. For example, pop songs are very popular, but they get repetitive very fast. And so where's all the quote-unquote good music gone? Why is music so bland these days? And if there's so many new people doing it, they just do the very boring, lazy stuff, put a synthesizer over the voice with some background beat. Why are they so successful? Where's music right now?
Yeah. So, specifically concerning... Oh, okay, he's leaving. How rude. He asks the question and then leaves.
Keep talking. I'm giving you the freedom to talk. Heck, take care of things.
All right.
Take care of things.
Exactly. That's the joke I was going to make. Please.
I made it for you.
I'm summertime now, so...
Oh, no, you're not.
Oh, God. Well, we took too long one.
Okay. Part of the academic disdain for popular music is that it kind of does use a lot of the top 100 songs, Billboard, whatever, use a lot of the same 4 chords for their melody. And if you know what music is, an accord is just a specific grouping of notes, and a chord can be made out of any scale, blah, 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 blah. Music theory stuff, which is very interesting. You should go learn if you're trying to be a musician. But anyway, a lot of the top 100 songs, they do use the same 4 chords and the same chord progression for a lot of them. And I forget what the chord progression is, but it's like a 2, 5... 3, 4, something, whatever. But a lot of the top 100 songs use the same 4 chords. So, I mean, you can understand how that would be boring to a lot of people who know a lot about music theory, and so they want to hear something really interesting. But then they go on to popular music, and it's just, wow, this is just a copy of so-and-so's song. And then the next song that plays, wow, this is the same 4 chords. Wow, so boring. And
so why don't people just invent a new chord?
I mean, I think that ties into our society of instant gratification, right?
I mean, yeah. So, well, part of it is that the familiarity with the same grouping is part of what makes it so popular for many people, because if you know it, I don't know if you guys know this, but the more you hear a specific grouping of notes and stuff, the more you like it. Like, people enjoy their favorite songs on the 100th listen way more than they did on the first listen. Partially because they've just gotten so used to it, and it is wired in their brain that this is good.
What happens when we listen to a song that we like so often, so much that we don't no longer enjoy it?
Yeah, I mean, that does happen, but that is on the other side of the case where you just get annoyed with hearing the same thing so many times. Yeah, that happens. But in general, because when you're hearing songs on the radio, they're not exact copies of each other. Usually. They do have differences between them that make it a unique piece, but at the same time, the underlying melody is the same, so it's really easy to sing along with because you already know everything. You're familiar with it, and there is that. But I mean that would be an academic rebuttal of popular music today, and I've heard that quite a few times. But the academic community that is more on board with how things sound today have pointed out that it's actually pretty crazy. Like, they use these interesting scales, and the things they do, they harmonize. Well, that's basic. Whatever. A lot of these songs do actually do something very interesting in the songs, using those 4 chords as a baseline. And they experiment. A lot of the songs just experiment and go crazy, and they, in the end, the singers do sound good, and it's all like, it does make sense that people want to listen to it, just for a whole variety of reasons. So I mean, yeah, you have your two sides. That it's actually good because it's widespread understanding of music, and people are listening to it a lot, and people are making money. And then you have people who don't like it because there's no originality, there's no uniqueness in it. But a part of that academic community, of the people who say that music today is bad, I'm pretty sure they only listen to the radio. Because I have no idea where they're coming from. I have heard so much interesting music, so much crazy stuff, so much cool stuff that I love to death. Like, if you listen to the radio, you will hear crap. I don't listen to the radio, but it's for another reason. So,
what reason?
Okay, well, yeah, I will get to that in 1 second. Like, yeah.
Besides conspiracy theories.
Shh. Okay, so, what was I saying? Yeah. There is a whole lot of unique music going on, especially with the advent of YouTube and Spotify and all these distributors where you can make your own music. And like, you can make your own music at home with a DAW. You can do whatever you want, and there's so much originality and interesting stuff out there from these just little people that no one has ever heard of. Like, all it takes is searching for more than 5 seconds and not listening to the radio, and you will find something extremely unique and interesting.
Where and how should we search?
I mean, that's all up to you. Part of it is knowing what genre you like, and just immersing yourself in the community, because I'm a part of, I follow a lot of the academic music theorist, interesting YouTubers who do all this stuff, who analyze music theory and so forth and so on. So, when they release an album that is, and I really like their music, so they release an album, and I'm like, okay, cool. I like your music because I was part of the community, and I got to experience this interesting, unique cool music that you're doing. And it's never ever going to be played on the radio because it's some YouTube people. As far as I know, no exclusively YouTube artist has been played on the radio. Which is actually interesting now that I think about it.
Well, I mean, I feel like you can draw a lot of parallels between that and indie game developers as well, right?
Yeah, I mean that's where all the unique stuff is happening on these new platforms with these unknown people.
Exactly, it's all
your
independent
children and your
developers,
new platforms,
right? Whereas stuff on the radio, I'm assuming, is like sponsored. You had to pay to get on the radio. You had to pay to go through the development, through, like just so much bureaucracy attached to like people who are editing the voice, different people who are suggesting this, advisors, like editors, test listeners, all that stuff, writers for the music, hiring singers, backup singers, and then only doing that with the idea of making money, right? Whereas you have indie developers who do make games and make music for the purpose of music and games. They don't expect to make a huge profit out of it. They don't come with like a massive budget. Their music and their art is based purely off of their own work and the goodwill of the community,
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps that's what we need to breed better and more organic art. We need to encourage and support those kinds of artists who do things out of passion and not out of profit.
I do things also.
Sorry, I mean, Impy, I swear to God. This is the worst. You can't start as well. How my reaction is to go to summer.
Okay, okay, yeah, so academic people who think that there's no original music are crazy. They don't know what they're talking about. And if you actually just find your community, find your genre, and listen, then you'll find something. I personally am very happy because I like many, many, many different types of genres. So I'm always finding unique stuff that's really interesting, and I love it. But the hardest part is I do have a huge complaint with popular music that is totally valid. Unlike those other people.
Things is not a personality trait. Two things before you started. So,
okay, go ahead.
Your advice so far is to find things which are good for you. And on the surface, that's terrible advice because obviously we want to find things which are good for us. It doesn't help us. But if we go deeper in it, it's actually really nice advice because it tells us to do our own research, which is always a good thing to do, and to see what we personally like because everyone is different. So that is quite thoughtful. The other thing is, after you mentioned I like, there was a short pause, and I just really enjoy how you have to think, oh my goodness, is there anything I actually like? And then you follow this up with I follow, suggesting you don't actually like these people. So 10 out of 10 imperfect there. Move on.
I mean, valid points. Yeah, I don't think I have to respond to anything. So, what I find just unconscionable with popular music and a whole bunch of other music, because people, that's just how they, is the lyrics. And you know me.
Shake it off.
Good gosh.
Shake it off. So
could you like
the funniest goddamn thing I've ever seen in the world.
I'm shaking in my boots.
If you pull up the lyrics of that song, it's the same line repeated for like 4 paragraphs. Oh god.
See,
it's hilarious.
And part of it is dumb people like to sing along with that. They're like, yeah, it's such a great song.
There's
shake it
also
off, shake it
smart
off,
people
shake it
who
off,
like to
shake
sing
it
along
off.
with it.
I doubt it.
Intelligence isn't based on
highly doubt it.
Difficult the music you like is.
No, not difficult, but simplistic. Which is just different.
That's just the same thing in the different direction, MP.
The same lyrics over and over again are just nonsense. Okay, so
if those are lyrics you really enjoy, then you will enjoy them the more you sing them. For example, the 100th time you listen to a song is going to be far more enjoyable to you than the first time. It's something I've been told by a good friend of mine who is a music theorist.
Well, he's dumb. Okay.
That's a theory. A music theory.
Oh, songs are okay.
It makes him not just sick, it makes him music.
I don't know. So personally, I do not like songs that just repeat. That's part of the reason I dislike much popular Christian music, just because it's all just. I can't even remember the lyrics. Gee, yeah, God save me. Yeah, God save me. Yeah, God save me. Yeah, God.
Yeah,
Like-
God has saved me. That's
I
the
think
end
we
of the
should
song.
eventually release a music which is just random tidbits of Imperfect singing and making stuff up like, yeah, God save me. Yeah, God save me. And then we put a short, good music loop into it and do a remix.
That would.
Oh yeah, sure.
It would totally sell. I get all the profits from that. Anyway,
Oui.
part of it's just repetition, and repetition legitimizes, as popular music theorist YouTuber Adam Neely always says. Repetition legitimizes in music, but there's so many songs I've heard where they repeat the chorus 3 times, and even over the bridge they just repeat the chorus. Like, why? Why could you not think of something else to say during that unique part of the music? There's no reason other than they wanted to sound the same the entire time, and they just want people to sing along. And that's something I will not. If I find a song, even though I like, there have been a lot of songs that I've personally liked, but just after a couple times listening, I could not listen to it anymore, just because I don't want to go. Oh, I don't know if you guys have heard Thunder by Imagine Dragons.
No.
I believe I have.
Nah, hear the thunder, lightning and the thunder,
There you go.
thunder, and the thunder, lightning and the thunder,
what's
thunder.
the name of that song again? You know, the one that goes fun.
It's probably. Oh, it's radioactive, isn't it?
I'd say it's lightning. Maybe it's storm.
Yeah,
Maybe
see,
and the
see, I really like that song, but I hate how much he just says lightning and the thunder, 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 thunder. Who would listen to that? People who don't care about the lyrics is who would listen to that, but okay.
Or people who are distracted and just want something to play in the background.
Yeah, and I mean, when I listen to music, I'll have a random playlist going on sometimes, and if I'm doing something and the song comes on, I'm like, okay, yeah, I can listen to it when I'm not when
you're not actually listening to it.
When I'm physically incapable of changing the song, I'll enjoy it.
So, if you had to look down to change it, you'd enjoy it.
Pretty much. And then lyrically, and then just when songs are about love, like the top 100 songs in the world, at least the top 100 Billboard, I would bet solid money right now that at least 90 of them are about love, about some aspect of a broken relationship, or how they want to have sex with someone, or some ridiculous
Don't associate sex with love, please.
Life lessons with summer, yeah.
It's
both fun, it's both healthy, but it's not the same.
Yeah, and then you have the songs that are like, ooh, yeah, I want to sleep with you because you're so cute. And yeah, and I think I love you. Oh, but I'm not sleeping with you. I'm sleeping with someone else. And I want to sleep with you, but I can't. So much garbage.
The classics.
That's pretty much the content of most top 100 songs.
Yeah.
It's just utterly nonsense, because there's so many songs out there. There's so many topics out there. Like George Ezra.
What about
George Ezra wrote a song about a watch. And it's so fun.
Now tell me, how many people do you think would enjoy listening to a song about? How many people could relate to a song about a watch? And how many people would vibe to a song about love and wanting to bang?
I suppose what Summer is saying is that most humans are terrible.
No, humans
Yeah,
are
pretty
great.
No.
Humans, as a large portion, don't like very deep personal topics as songs, because they want songs when they're about to have fun, right? When they go party, when they're with friends,
Because
and then
they
you
are
talk about
Okay.
societally accepted things with friends, or you sing them.
Yeah, I mean, even then, the same artist, George Ezra, he also has a song called Shotgun, and it's about traveling in, we're pretty sure it's Brazil, because he doesn't mention the country, but it's like traveling in Brazil and having just experiencing fun times in Brazil. It's like, that's awesome. It's great. I love the
is.
song. There's so
Good
many
for
other
you.
songs out there about so many different things.
And I'll
That-
have to say, we talked about the Watch song. I think there's even less people who are gonna relate to traveling to Brazil.
Well, see, he never actually mentions Brazil. It's like, I'll be riding shotgun underneath the
I know
hot
the
sun,
song.
and like a someone new.
all
Yeah.
these videos will be copyright claim.
No, it should only they should only copyright us if we're more than 10 seconds.
Ah.
Hopefully,
So you just have to speed it up.
I'll be riding shotgun underneath that.
Perfect.
I ran shotgun for a whole second.
Copyrighted. So that's just something with lyrics. A lot of new artists and even established artists who are more about the music, and they don't really have talent with the lyrics. It's just about love because it's something easy and convenient that everybody can connect to.
Yes, and I think there is a great deal of songs about love written, because it's a very fascinating and deep topic, but the things that people write are so repetitive.
I agree.
So yeah, I get you. It would be cool if they explored the topic in different ways.
I've seen that quite a few times.
Yeah,
And
you have.
okay, love, but love with a significant other, like love between a family. That is a rare topic in a song.
Oh, there was 7 years old, right?
Yeah, 7 years old. That was a very good one. My sister listened to it quite a bit, but I like that
Which
one.
one?
'Cause
The
7
one
years old.
that's
Once I
your
was
sister
7
that's
years
7 years
old.
old.
No.
Sister.
Maddie, one of my. I don't know how old she is. 16. 16.
Oh, she's the one who wants to become a nurse. No, become a kindergarten educator.
Okay, dude. Yeah, no other one. Just one of my sisters. Okay, I got
Stop
5
having
of
so
them.
many
How
sisters.
many are there?
5 sisters.
Oh, jeez.
So yeah, but anyway, songs about loving your family. Songs about, I don't know. I might even accept loving your dog at this point.
Yes, I don't think I've actually heard something
Me
about
either.
pets. Oh no, wait, there was something. There's a Queen song, All Dead. That's the name, and it's something that the artist wrote after their cat died, right? So that's one about loving your pet.
How about songs about hating people?
Yeah.
Yes, there is a genre called punk.
Mm.
I mean, I think we spent enough time on.
Hey,
Imperfect.
why are you
I would
trying
like
to
your
silence
closing
me?
words, and then we're getting our closing words. Or do you have
Okay.
more things you want to discuss?
I mean, I could talk about music for a long time, but no, closing words.
Yes.
People who say that music is boring,
Music are boring.
is only because they have not actually tried to listen to different types of music, and they're bored with their own genre and their crowd of what they listen to. I do see, well, it's the same exact problem with lyrics. There are many people who say, back in my day, the songs were about so much more better stuff.
Really?
Yes, quite a few people say that. And I would say, well, no. The songs that have survived from the past eras, a lot of them are about more interesting stuff than sleeping with a random one-night stand, which is what Taylor Swift is all about. And let's see. I would say they do have a point with that, but again, that's only because they're not looking further than the top 100, and they should do that. And music is actually super awesome, and there are whole lots of things going on behind the popular veil of music. I think that's my closing statement.
Good. For our closing statement, guys, I hope you've had a blast talking about this. I think you two have, because those are passionate topics for you. So once again, thanks for doing your research. You've been awesome, and we'll try to keep it up. As for all of our listeners, I hope you've had fun listening to this. I hope you've enjoyed this. And now, since we always have to elongate our closing words until they eventually take over the podcast as is intended, I really hope the other two guys don't listen to this and just zone out for now. Who's asking the question tonight? I think I want you two to discuss it and come up with a question, but I don't want to spend too much time. So you get 2 minutes to come up with the question, or decide on who of you. Who asked the last question?
Probably Impy, I think.
What was the last question? Mental health? I don't remember. Schizophrenia.
Schizophrenia, yes.
Was the last topic.
How about this? Do you like the new logo? It looks pretty good, doesn't it?
That's a good one. How do you think about the new logo? Is it too repetitive? And
does it look like it belongs in the top 100?
Yeah.
Does it draw the eye?
Tell us what you personally would like to see as a logo, or your ideas. In the manner of that, guys, I hope you've had a blast listening to this. I hope you've enjoyed it, had a great time, enjoyed it again, and also learned something from it. We're doing this all for you in order to help you achieve the best lives you can. So in the manner of that, have a lovely evening.